Her ex mocked the waitress at the party. Then the mafia boss pulled her onto his lap, and everyone froze. Why did the mafia boss react that way? And why did everyone freeze when he pulled her onto his lap? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss one of our upcoming stories. Your support means so much to us and helps us continue bringing you unforgettable stories. Thank you for watching, staying with us, and supporting the channel. We truly appreciate having you here. And before we start, leave a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. We always love seeing how far our stories travel. Now, let's begin today's story. You still carry trays for a living? Grant Mercer's voice reached me before I saw his face, and somehow, after 2 years, he still knew exactly where to place a sentence so it hurt without sounding cruel to anyone else. I stopped beneath a chandelier that probably cost more than my apartment building, balancing 8 champagne flutes on a silver tray while Manhattan glittered 40 floors below me. For half a second, I considered pretending I hadn't heard him. Then I remembered I was being paid to smile. So I turned. "Good evening, Grant." His expression changed when he recognized me. Not surprise. Satisfaction. That was worse. I had known this shift would be difficult the moment I stepped into the penthouse. Everything about the party reminded me that there were 2 versions of New York living within the same few miles. In mine, I counted subway rides, grocery receipts, and every dollar going into the savings account labeled Laurel Studio. In this one, women wore diamonds under warm golden lights while men discussed vacation homes as casually as I discussed rent with Tessa. "Laurel Bennett," Grant said, looking at the people around him as though he had discovered an amusing relic from his past. I can't believe it. I could. Grant had always believed the world arranged itself for his convenience. 2 years earlier, I had been the woman beside him. The woman he said he loved when nobody important was listening. Then his family decided a waitress with secondhand furniture and dreams of restoring antique books wasn't exactly Mercer material. Grant had called our breakup practical. I had called it painful. Eventually, I learned to call it useful. "Champagne?" I asked. His eyes dropped to my black catering uniform. "So this is what you're doing now?" "Tonight, yes." "Still saving for that little bookshop?" "Restoration studio." "Right." He smiled. "That." Someone beside him laughed softly. I felt heat rise beneath my collar, but my hands stayed steady. That mattered. My dignity had become a quiet thing over the years. It didn't announce itself. It simply refused to leave when people tried to take it. "Enjoy the party," I said. I turned before he could answer and moved toward the next cluster of guests. 5 steps. 6. Breathe. Crystal chimed softly on my tray. A string quartet played near the windows. Somewhere behind me, Grant laughed again. Then I felt it. Someone watching me. I glanced toward the far end of the room. A man sat at the most private table in the penthouse, surrounded by people who seemed careful about how loudly they spoke around him. Mid-30s, perhaps. Dark suit. White shirt. No tie. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't drinking. He simply watched the room with the stillness of someone who never needed to compete for attention. I didn't know his name yet. I only noticed that when he lifted his eyes toward Grant, the men at his table stopped talking. Then his gaze moved to me. Calm. Unreadable. Almost unsettling. I looked away first. "Laurel," Tessa whispered as she passed with another tray. "Do you know who that is?" No, her voice dropped. "Ronan Vale." The name meant nothing to me. Not then. I adjusted my grip on the tray and kept walking. Behind me, I heard Grant call my name again, louder this time. And across the room, Ronan Vale slowly set his glass down. "Laurel, do not walk away from me." Grant said it lightly, almost playfully, but I recognized the command hiding beneath the smile. I stopped because 3 guests had turned to look, and making a scene was exactly what he wanted. When I faced him again, he was holding an empty champagne flute toward me. "You forgot someone. I thought you were finished." "With the drink." His smile widened. "Maybe." I replaced his glass and tried to move on, but Grant shifted just enough to keep me beside the table. His friends watched with the lazy curiosity of people who had never worried about being embarrassed while they were working. "You know," Grant said, "Laurel used to hate parties like this." A blond man beside him glanced at me. You two know each other? We dated. Grant paused for effect. Seriously, actually. There it was. The first small cut, delivered with a laugh, so everyone else could pretend it was harmless. Grant, I said quietly. I am working. I know. I am just surprised. By what? That nothing changed. My fingers tightened beneath the tray. 2 years ago, those words would have broken something in me. Tonight, they only reminded me why leaving him had eventually felt like learning to breathe again. A lot changed, I said. You just were not there to see it. His smile faltered. Only for a second. I should have left then. Instead, one of the women at his table asked, "What did you want to do?" Grant answered before I could. She had this dream about restoring old books. A little studio somewhere. Shelves, paper, glue, all that. He chuckled. It was adorable. Adorable. He used to say that word whenever he wanted to make my ambitions sound small. I looked directly at the woman. I still planned to open it. Really? She asked, and unlike Grant, she sounded genuinely interested. Really? How close are you? Closer every month. Grant leaned back. At this rate, she might get there by retirement. A few people laughed. Not everyone. The woman looked uncomfortable. My face burned anyway. I could hear the quartet behind me, the low conversations, the delicate clink of expensive glassware. Everything continued as though my humiliation were just another sound in the room. Then I glanced toward Ronan Vale. He had not moved. Silas Keene, the man seated to his right, appeared to be speaking to him, but Ronan was no longer listening. His attention rested entirely on Grant. There was nothing dramatic in his expression. That made it worse. Or perhaps better. I could not decide. "Excuse me," I said, stepping away. Grant caught my attention with another laugh. "Come on, Laurel. You used to have a sense of humor." I turned back. "I still do." Then smile. Something inside me went very still. I smile when something is funny. Silence settled around his table. Grant's friends suddenly found their glasses fascinating. His jaw tightened, but the charming expression returned almost immediately. "There she is," he said. "Always so proud. And you always mistook that for a flaw." I walked away before my voice could betray how hard my heart was beating. Tessa met me near the service station. "Are you okay?" "I will be." "That man is awful." "I know." She reached for my tray, but I shook my head. I needed something in my hands. Something ordinary. Something I could control. Across the room, Ronan Vale finally looked away from Grant and toward Silas. He said something I could not hear. Silas nodded once and rose from the table. I told myself it had nothing to do with me. Then Grant called for me a third time, and when I looked over, I saw a small cream-colored envelope resting beneath his hand. "You are really going to make me ask twice?" Grant called after me, and the softness in his voice made my stomach tighten more than anger would have. I turned slowly. He was still seated beneath the warm glow of the pendant lights, one hand resting beside that cream-colored envelope. "Table service," he added, raising his glass. "That is what they are paying you for, right?" I could have asked Tessa to take his table. I could have found the catering manager and explained that Grant was deliberately making me uncomfortable. But I had spent too many years letting Grant convince me that avoiding him meant he had won something. So I straightened my shoulders and walked back. "What can I get you?" "Champagne." His glass was still half full. "Of course." I reached for the bottle in the silver cooler. Grant leaned closer. "You embarrassed me." I kept pouring. "You seem fine." That little speech about pride. You started the conversation, and I can finish it. His smile remained perfectly pleasant for everyone watching. That was Grant's talent. He could make cruelty look like etiquette. I set the bottle down. "Are we finished?" "Almost." His hand moved across the table, covering the envelope. "My father is here tonight." I glanced toward the far side of the penthouse. Warren Mercer stood near the windows speaking with 3 men in tailored suits. Even from 40 feet away, he carried the same polished certainty Grant did, only colder. "That has nothing to do with me." "Everything has something to do with someone, Laurel." "That sounds profound until you actually think about it." The woman beside him hid a smile behind her glass. Grant noticed. His eyes hardened. Still performing. Still working. I stepped back. "Enjoy your evening." This time he let me leave. I crossed toward the service station, passing within 15 feet of Ronan Vale's table. His chair was angled slightly toward the room. Silas had returned and was murmuring something near his shoulder. Ronan listened without looking at him. His eyes followed Warren Mercer instead, then Grant, then me. It felt less like curiosity now and more like he was assembling pieces of a puzzle nobody else knew existed. I looked away. "You need 5 minutes," Tessa whispered when I reached her. "I need 5 years. Take the hallway by the kitchen. I will cover your section." I almost agreed. Then the catering manager signaled urgently for another tray to go toward the terrace. Later, I loaded fresh glasses and moved back into the crowd. The room had grown louder as the evening loosened around its guests. Laughter, piano beneath the strings, the soft rush of traffic 40 stories below whenever the terrace doors opened. I passed Grant without looking at him. Someone stepped into my path, forcing me sideways. I corrected the tray before a glass could fall. "Sorry," the guest said. "No problem." I continued toward the terrace. 3 steps later, something brushed against the side of my apron. Light. Almost nothing. I assumed it was the edge of a chair. At the terrace, I served 2 couples and returned inside. That was when Silas appeared beside Ronan again and whispered something. Ronan's expression changed. Barely. His gaze dropped to my apron pocket. I followed it instinctively. A corner of cream-colored paper was sticking out. My heartbeat stumbled. I stopped walking. I knew that envelope. I had seen it beneath Grant's hand less than 2 minutes earlier. I reached toward my pocket, but before my fingers touched it, a voice cut across the room. "Excuse me." Grant stood behind me, staring directly at the envelope. The smile was gone now. "Laurel," he said, loud enough for the nearest guests to hear. "What exactly did you just put in your pocket?" I did not put anything in my pocket. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. Grant tilted his head as if I had disappointed him. "Then what is that?" Conversations nearest us began to fade. I looked down again at the cream-colored corner protruding from my apron, and suddenly the room felt too warm. "I do not know." "Interesting." Grant stood. "Because that envelope was on my table." Tessa appeared near the service station, her face tightening when she realized what was happening. I set my tray carefully on an empty cocktail table. Crystal-touched marble with a soft click. "Then someone put it there." Grant gave a small laugh. "Someone?" "Yes." "Laurel, come on." That tone. Patient. Superior. The same tone he used years ago whenever he wanted me to doubt something I knew was true. "Just give it back before this becomes embarrassing." It became embarrassing when you decided to turn it into a performance. A few heads turned toward us. Grant noticed every one of them. His expression changed immediately. "I am trying to help you." Then stop talking. Silence. For one satisfying second, he had no answer. Then a member of the event security team approached. "Is there a problem?" Grant gestured toward my apron. A private envelope disappeared from my table. "Now it is in her pocket." The guard looked at me. Not accusingly. "Not yet." "Ma'am, would you mind removing it?" My fingers felt cold as I pulled the envelope free. It was heavier than paper should have been. I held it by one corner. "I have never seen what is inside this." Grant extended his hand. "Give it to me." "No," his eyebrows lifted. "It belongs to me. Then security can handle it." For the first time that night, genuine irritation crossed his face. He recovered quickly, but I saw it. So did someone else. Across the room, Ronan Vale leaned back slightly in his chair. His attention was no longer divided. Silas stood beside him, motionless. The guard accepted the envelope from me and examined it. "Was anything else inside?" Grant asked. Too quickly. The guard looked up. "You tell me, sir." Grant paused. "Cash." My stomach dropped. "How much?" $5,000. A whisper moved through the nearby guests. $5,000. More than 3 months of my rent. More than enough to make a struggling waitress look desperate. I understood the shape of the accusation now, and understanding made me strangely calm. "Open it," I said. Grant looked at me. "What?" "If you think I stole your money, open the envelope." The guard broke the seal. Everyone watched. He reached inside and removed several folded sheets of blank stationery. Nothing else. Grant stared. "That is impossible." I almost laughed. "Apparently not." But then the guard checked the envelope again. His fingers stopped. From an inner fold, he removed a small black flash drive. The change in Grant was immediate. Not outrage. Fear. It lasted less than a second, but I saw it. So did Ronan. Warren Mercer turned from the windows at exactly the same moment. His gaze landed on the flash drive, then on his son. Something invisible passed between them. Ronan rose. He did not rush. He simply stood, buttoned his jacket, and the atmosphere of the entire room seemed to rearrange itself around him. Silas moved first, crossing toward us. Grant stepped closer to the security guard. "Give me the envelope." "Actually," Ronan said from behind him, his voice quiet enough that everyone had to stop talking to hear it. "I think it should stay exactly where it is." Grant went still. Ronan's eyes moved from the flash drive to me. "Miss Bennett," he said, "do not leave." "I am not going anywhere," I said, although every instinct in me wanted the elevator, the street, and about 10 miles between myself and that room. Ronan Vale stopped a few feet away. Up close, his stillness was even more unsettling. Grant immediately stepped between us. "This does not concern you, Vale." Ronan looked at him. "You made it concern everyone when you accused her publicly." Grant's jaw tightened. "She had my property. Property you claimed contained $5,000. Ronan glanced at the blank stationery in the security guard's hand. "It did not. Someone removed it." "Then you should be interested in finding out who." Warren Mercer was moving toward us now, smiling the way powerful men smiled when they wanted everyone to believe nothing was wrong. "Gentlemen, this is a charity event. Surely we can resolve a misplaced envelope without ruining the evening." His eyes touched the flash drive for half a second. That was enough. Ronan noticed. I noticed Ronan noticing. And suddenly I understood that whatever was happening had very little to do with $5,000. "Give Mr. Mercer his belongings," Warren told the guard. "There is no reason to involve the young woman further." Young woman. Not Laurel. Not Miss Bennett. Just an inconvenient person in a black uniform. "Actually," I said, "there is." Warren looked at me as though the furniture had spoken. "Grant accused me of stealing in front of half this room. I would like security to document exactly what was found." Grant exhaled sharply. "Laurel, stop making this bigger than it is." I turned toward him. "You announced it to the room." His face hardened. "Because I saw you near my table. I was serving your table. And now my envelope is in your pocket." "Was." "Same difference." "No, Grant. Words matter when you are accusing someone." The silence around us deepened. I could feel people pretending not to listen. Grant gave me the smile I remembered from expensive restaurants with his parents, the one that meant I was about to be corrected. "You always did have a talent for making yourself the victim." That landed. Not because it was true, but because once, years ago, I had believed him when he said things like that. My grip tightened around the edge of the cocktail table. "And you always had a talent for saying cruel things politely." His smile vanished. "Cruel?" He looked around as though inviting an audience. "I supported every little dream you had. The book hobby, the studio fantasy, all of it. But at some point, adults accept reality." A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Grant continued anyway. "You are 26 years old, Laurel. You are carrying champagne at parties you could never afford to attend. Maybe I was right to leave." My throat tightened. I refused to look down. "Maybe you were." That surprised him. "What?" "Maybe leaving was the best thing you ever did for me." His cheeks colored. "You really think anyone here believes you are better off?" He laughed and gestured toward my uniform. "Look at you." Then came a small sound from behind him. Click. Ronan had set his glass onto a nearby table. He had been holding it so quietly I had forgotten it was there. Grant turned. Ronan's expression remained calm, but the room changed around that calm. "I have looked at her," Ronan said. Grant gave a nervous laugh. "Then you understand." "I understand that she is working while you are humiliating someone who cannot simply walk away without risking her job." Grant opened his mouth. Ronan did not raise his voice. "That is not power, Mercer." His eyes moved briefly to me. "It is cowardice dressed for dinner." Nobody laughed this time. "Cowardice," Grant repeated, and for the first time that night, his confidence sounded borrowed. Ronan did not answer immediately. He looked at the security guard, then at the envelope, then finally at me. "Miss Bennett, come here." Every eye near us shifted in my direction. I stayed where I was. Why? Something almost like surprise crossed Ronan's face. Apparently, people did not often ask him that question. Because Mercer seems determined to make you part of his performance. And standing beside you fixes that. No, his gaze held mine. But it changes the audience. I should have refused. Instead, I walked toward him because Grant was watching me with that familiar expression, the one that expected me to shrink. I stopped beside Ronan's chair. Grant laughed under his breath. This is ridiculous. Laurel, you do realize who you are trying to impress. I am not trying to impress anyone. You never were very good at reading a room. Neither are you, Ronan said. Grant turned toward him. What is that supposed to mean? It means everyone here stopped being entertained several minutes ago. I looked around. He was right. Nobody was smiling now. Warren Mercer stood rigid near the edge of the gathering. Silas had quietly taken possession of the envelope and flash drive from security, apparently with permission from the event manager, who looked relieved to have the situation out of his hands. Grant noticed. Give that back. Silas did not move. Ronan leaned slightly toward me. Sit. I stared at him. Excuse me. The nearest chair was occupied, and before I could understand what he intended, Ronan reached for my hand and guided me gently toward him. I found myself seated across his lap, still upright, more startled than frightened, his arm resting loosely behind me rather than holding me in place. The entire room froze. Even the quartet seemed suddenly too loud. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs. What are you doing? I whispered. Changing the audience, he said quietly. Then his eyes returned to Grant. Grant looked as if someone had erased every prepared line from his mind. Vale, what exactly is this? Ronan's voice remained level. You wanted everyone to notice Miss Bennett's position in this room. His gaze swept over my black uniform, then returned to Grant. Now they have. Heat rushed into my face. Ronan, Warren warned. It was the first time I had heard anyone use his first name. Ronan ignored him. Grant recovered enough to sneer. Careful. She has always been impressed by money. I started to rise, but Ronan's arm shifted away immediately, giving me room. That small movement registered with me. He was not keeping me there. I could leave. I stayed for one more second. Ronan looked at Grant. Then it is fortunate she chose the richest man in the room. A breathless silence followed. Grant's face went pale. I turned sharply toward Ronan. I did not choose anything. That changed the room again. Ronan looked at me, and something in his expression softened. You are right. He removed his hand completely. My mistake. I stood at once. My feet touched the marble floor, and somehow standing beside him felt more powerful than sitting on him ever could. Grant laughed, desperate now. There. Even she thinks this is absurd. I faced him. Do not confuse my boundaries with agreement. His smile disappeared. Ronan's eyes stayed on me, thoughtful now rather than commanding. Then Silas approached and placed the black flash drive on the table. Mr. Vale, he said quietly, you were right. Warren Mercer stopped breathing for a beat. Grant looked toward the elevators. Ronan looked at neither of them. He looked at me. Miss Bennett, he said, someone put this in your pocket because they expected nobody in this room to care what happened to a waitress. His gaze finally shifted to Grant. That assumption was their first mistake. Nobody cared because they were not supposed to notice me. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Ronan's gaze sharpened. Silas placed the flash drive inside a small evidence pouch the event manager had provided, careful not to touch it directly. Explain, Ronan said. I looked at Grant. He called me back to his table 3 times. He kept me standing there. He made sure people saw me near him. Grant scoffed. That proves nothing. Maybe not. I folded my arms. But you knew the envelope was missing before I even touched my pocket. Silence. Grant blinked. I replayed the moment in my head. The weight against my apron. Ronan watching. Grant calling across the room almost immediately. You asked what I put in my pocket, I continued. You did not ask whether I had seen your envelope. You already knew where it was. Warren stepped forward. This speculation has gone far enough. I agree, Ronan said. Warren seemed relieved until Ronan added. So we will stop speculating. He looked at Silas. Check the security footage. Grant's face changed. You cannot just demand access to private surveillance. I do not have to. Ronan glanced toward the event manager. The venue can review footage concerning an accusation against one of its employees. The manager nodded quickly. Absolutely. Grant looked toward his father. Warren's expression stayed composed, but his fingers tightened around his cuff. I noticed because I had spent years working rooms like this. Wealthy people thought servers were invisible. Invisible people learned everything. Laurel. Tessa touched my elbow. Come with me for a minute. I let her lead me toward the service corridor. The moment the ballroom doors closed behind us, my knees felt weak. I pressed both palms against the cool wall. What just happened? Tessa whispered. I do not know. You were sitting on Ronan Vale. I closed my eyes. Please never say that sentence again. Half of Manhattan is going to say it tomorrow. Wonderful. I opened my eyes. I need air. You need a different planet. A door opened behind us. Ronan stepped into the corridor alone. Tessa immediately straightened. I will be nearby, she said, then disappeared toward the kitchen with suspicious speed. I looked at Ronan. If you are here to tell me to sit somewhere else, the answer is no. His mouth almost curved. Almost. I came to apologize. That surprised me more than anything he had done in the ballroom. For which part? Touching you without asking. He did not decorate the sentence with excuses. I thought stopping Mercer quickly mattered more than asking permission. I was wrong. I studied him. Men like Grant apologized by explaining why you had forced them to behave badly. Ronan simply stood there and accepted the weight of what he had done. You embarrassed him, I said. That was intentional. You embarrassed me too. That was not. Intent does not erase impact. His eyes held mine. No, it does not. Something inside me shifted, but I refused to name it. Why do you care about the flash drive? I asked. His expression closed slightly. Because Mercer did not bring it here by accident. What is on it? I do not know yet. But you have an idea. Yes. And he was silent. I pushed away from the wall. You just involved yourself in my life in front of an entire ballroom. You do not get mysterious now. For the first time, Ronan looked almost amused. You are not intimidated by me. Should I be? Most people are. Most people probably know more about you than I do. His expression changed at that. Before he could answer, Silas entered the corridor holding a tablet. We found the footage. Ronan turned. Silas looked directly at me. Miss Bennett was right. Someone placed the envelope in her apron. My breath caught. Grant. Silas shook his head. No, he tapped the screen once. It was Warren Mercer. Warren. My voice came out quieter than I intended. Silas turned the tablet toward me. The footage showed the ballroom from above, grainy but clear enough. I watched myself pass Grant's table with the tray balanced against my palm. A guest stepped into my path. I shifted sideways. Warren Mercer moved behind me at exactly that moment, close enough for his hand to disappear beside my apron for less than a second. Then he continued walking without looking back. My skin went cold. He planned it. Yes, Ronan said. Then Grant knew. Silas enlarged another section of the footage. Grant was watching his father. Not me. The moment Warren moved away, Grant's eyes followed me across the room. He knew, I whispered. 2 years of memories rearranged themselves inside my head. Grant correcting my clothes before dinners. Grant telling me which subjects not to discuss around his father. Grant explaining that his family valued discretion, reputation, loyalty. I had mistaken control for sophistication because everything around the Mercers had been expensive enough to make bad behavior look polished. Why me? I asked. Ronan's answer came immediately. Because you were convenient. Somehow that hurt more than if he had said revenge. A waitress moving between tables attracts no attention, Silas explained. If security stopped you later, the drive would appear to be stolen property. The Mercers could deny knowing how it reached you. I looked at Ronan. And where was it supposed to go? He hesitated. Away from this building. That is not an answer. It is the safest answer I can give you tonight. I laughed once, without humor. There it is again. What? Powerful men deciding how much truth I am allowed to handle. Ronan went still. Laurel. Grant decided I was not good enough for his world. Warren decided I was invisible enough to use. You decided you could put me on your lap because it solved a problem faster. Silas suddenly became fascinated by the tablet. Ronan did not look away. You are right. Stop saying that unless you understand it. I do understand. Do you? My voice shook now, and I hated that. You embarrassed Grant for treating me like an object, then used me to make a point. Your reason may have been better, but I was still the point being made. The corridor fell silent except for the muffled music beyond the doors. Ronan took one step backward, not toward me, away, giving me space. Then I owe you more than an apology. You owe me nothing. Respect is not a debt. That stopped me. His voice had lost its polished authority. For the first time, he sounded simply like a man who knew he had made a mistake. I cannot undo what I did, he continued, but I can make sure I do not repeat it. I studied him, searching for the trick. There was none I could see. Then start with the truth. Ronan glanced at Silas. Silas gave the smallest nod. The drive contains records, Ronan said. Financial records involving Warren Mercer and businesses connected to people I know. Illegal? Potentially. And dangerous? He chose his words carefully. Dangerous to reputations, careers, companies. Not to you, if I can prevent it. I do not want you preventing things from me without asking. A faint, almost rueful smile touched his face. I am learning that. The ballroom door opened behind us. Grant stepped into the corridor. His face was pale, his confidence gone. Laurel, we need to talk. I looked at the man I had once loved and felt something unexpected. Nothing. No longing. No fear. Just clarity. No, I said. Grant stared at me. You do not understand what is happening. Then explain why your father put that drive in my pocket. He glanced at Ronan, then Silas, and I saw the answer before he spoke. Because, Grant said slowly, he knew Ronan Vale would never let anyone search him. So I was camouflaged. The words tasted bitter. Grant looked down the corridor toward the ballroom doors before answering. You were supposed to carry the envelope downstairs. That was all. Without knowing it. Yes. And then you accused me of stealing $5,000. His face tightened. That part was not supposed to happen like that. I almost laughed. There was a better version? My father changed the plan. What plan? Ronan asked. Grant looked at him, and whatever courage had brought him into the corridor seemed to disappear. The drive was supposed to leave with catering. Someone would collect it later. Who? Silas asked. I do not know. You expect us to believe that? I was not involved in the details. I knew that sentence. Grant had used versions of it throughout our relationship whenever responsibility became uncomfortable. I did not know. I did not mean it that way. You misunderstood. Different words. Same escape route. Why did you call attention to me? I asked. Grant rubbed his jaw. My father thought Vale had noticed something. He told me to create a distraction. My chest went cold. So humiliating me was the distraction. Laurel, I was trying to keep this from becoming worse. For whom? He did not answer. That was answer enough. Ronan moved toward the ballroom door. Silas, secure a copy of the surveillance footage with the venue manager. Preserve the original drive exactly as it was found. His voice was controlled again, all business. We leave Miss Bennett out of everything else. Wait. 3 men turned toward me. I hated how quickly the word had come out, because part of me wanted nothing more than to put on my coat, take the subway home, and wake up tomorrow pretending this night belonged to someone else. But Grant had just admitted something important. If Warren wanted the drive carried downstairs, someone was waiting for it. Ronan's expression sharpened. Possibly. Then whoever was waiting might still be there. That is not your concern. I stared at him. You were doing so well. Silas lowered his eyes, possibly hiding a smile. Ronan exhaled. What I mean is that you have already been placed in the middle of something without your consent. I will not ask you to go further. That was different. I heard the difference. Thank you. Grant stepped toward me. Laurel, listen to him. Go home. I turned on him. You do not get to agree with a reasonable man after spending the evening proving you are not one. His mouth closed. I am staying long enough to give the event manager my statement, I said. Then I am leaving because I choose to leave. Ronan nodded once. Fair. We returned to the ballroom. Conversations restarted too quickly as we entered. People looked away with the exaggerated innocence of children caught listening through a door. Warren Mercer was gone. Where is he? Grant asked. The event manager pointed toward the private elevators. Mr. Mercer left several minutes ago. Grant went pale. Ronan did not react, but Silas immediately checked his phone. I gave my statement in a small office beside the coat room. 10 minutes later, I signed my name beneath a factual account of the envelope, the accusation, and the surveillance footage. No drama. No speculation. Just truth. When I stepped outside, Ronan was waiting alone. "Your coat," he said, holding it out rather than placing it around me. Another small correction. Another thing I noticed. "Thank you." I slipped it on. "My car can take you home." "No," he nodded. "No argument." "Then I will ask instead. Would you allow my driver to take you home?" I looked at him. "Why?" "Because Grant knows where you live." My breath caught. Ronan continued quietly. "And Warren just disappeared after using you to move something he desperately wanted hidden." For the first time all evening, the glittering penthouse did not feel embarrassing or intimidating. It felt exposed. I looked across the room for Grant. He was gone too. Then my phone vibrated inside my apron. One message. Unknown number. 6 words. "You should have stayed invisible, Laurel." Do not delete that message. Ronan's voice changed the moment he saw my face. I handed him the phone without thinking, then immediately took it back. "Sorry. Habit." His eyes met mine. "Good habit." I showed him the screen instead. He read the 6 words once. Nothing moved in his expression, but something in the air around him hardened. "Silas." Silas appeared almost immediately. I wondered if Ronan ever needed to call anyone twice. "Unknown number," Ronan said. "Photograph the screen. Do not take her phone." That last sentence was for me. I noticed. Silas documented the message while I stood beneath the coat room lights, trying to convince myself that 6 words could not make Manhattan suddenly feel smaller. Could Grant have sent it? I asked. "Yes," Ronan said. "Could Warren?" "Yes." "Could somebody else?" A pause. "Yes." I hated that answer most. Tessa hurried toward us carrying her purse and coat. "I am coming with you." "You are not." "Laurel, you have a 7-year-old waiting at your sister's apartment. Go get him." Her face tightened. "And let you leave alone?" "She will not be alone," Ronan said. Tessa looked at him, then at me. I could practically hear the argument forming in her head. "I am accepting the driver," I told her. Ronan said nothing. No victory smile. No, I told you so. Somehow that made accepting help easier. 20 minutes later, I sat in the back of a black sedan with Ronan beside me and Silas in the front passenger seat. I had expected Ronan to send a driver and disappear back into his mysterious world. Instead, he had asked, "Would you be comfortable if I came with you?" Asked, not ordered. I had said yes. Manhattan slid past the tinted windows in ribbons of white and red. My catering uniform suddenly felt ridiculous against the soft leather seat. "Who are you?" I asked. Ronan turned from the window. "That is a broad question. People stop talking when you stand up. Warren Mercer looks at you like he owes you something. Grant looks at you like he wishes he had never learned your name. And your friend somehow gets security footage faster than I can get coffee during a morning rush." From the front seat, Silas said, "I am efficient." I almost smiled. Ronan did not. "My family has interests in real estate, shipping, hospitality, and private investment." That sounds like an answer written by an attorney. Probably because attorneys helped write it. "Ronan." He looked at me for a long moment. "There are parts of my business you would not approve of." My stomach tightened. "Criminal parts? Parts that operate outside the kind of world you live in?" That is another non-answer. It is the answer I can give without asking you to carry information you never requested. I looked down at my hands. He had listened. That mattered more than I wanted it to. The car slowed outside my building in Queens. My apartment was on the 3rd floor above a laundromat with a flickering blue sign. Usually, seeing it made me feel safe. Tonight, a dark sedan was parked across the street. Its lights were off. Ronan saw it at the same moment I did. Is that car normally there? I do not memorize every car on my block. Silas checked something on his phone. It has been parked there for at least 12 minutes. My throat went dry. Then the sedan across the street pulled away calmly, disappearing around the corner. Nobody followed it. Nobody needed to. The message had already been delivered. "I am not going upstairs," I said. Ronan waited. He did not tell me what to do. "I want somewhere public," I continued. somewhere with cameras. And I want to know what was on that drive. Those are two separate requests. Then answer them separately. For the first time that night, Ronan smiled. It was brief, tired, and unexpectedly human. There is a hotel I own 6 blocks from here. Public lobby. Cameras everywhere. You choose when you leave. And the drive. His smile disappeared. Silas finished decrypting the first folder 10 minutes ago. Silas turned halfway around in his seat. Laurel, your name is in it. The city noise seemed to vanish. That is impossible. I thought so too, Ronan said. Until we found a payment made 2 years ago. I stared at him. Payment for what? Ronan's eyes held mine. For making sure Grant Mercer ended his relationship with you. Someone paid Grant to leave me? I heard the question, but it did not sound like my voice. Ronan did not answer until we were inside the hotel lobby, surrounded by polished marble, quiet music, security cameras, and enough people that I could finally breathe normally again. Silas placed a tablet on the coffee table between us. Not Grant, he said. The payment went to a consulting company controlled by Warren Mercer. I stared at the screen. My name appeared beside a date from 2 years earlier. Laurel Bennett. Background review. Relationship resolution. $35,000. Relationship resolution? I whispered. That is what they called it. Ronan sat across from me rather than beside me. There are emails attached. Show me. Silas glanced at Ronan. Ronan shook his head slightly. Do not ask me. She decides. Silas turned the tablet toward me. The first email was short. Warren had written to someone whose name I did not recognize. He wanted my employment history, finances, family background, education, and debts reviewed. The second described me as unsuitable for the Mercer family's long-term plans. The third made my hands tremble. Grant will cooperate. He understands what is expected. I read it twice. He knew. Nobody answered. Grant knew his father investigated me, and he agreed to end things. Ronan's voice was quiet. That is what the records suggest. Memories returned with cruel precision. Grant arriving at my apartment 2 years ago in a charcoal coat. Refusing to come inside. Telling me we wanted different lives. Saying love was not enough when 2 people came from different worlds. I had spent months wondering what flaw he had finally discovered in me. Apparently, it had been my bank balance. My job. My ordinary life. Why pay $35,000? I asked. Silas enlarged another document. The money appears to have covered the investigation, legal preparation, and an arrangement with a public relations consultant in case you reacted publicly. I stared at him. They prepared for me to tell people my boyfriend dumped me. They prepared to control the story if necessary. A laugh escaped me. Thin. Disbelieving. I cried alone in my apartment for 3 months. They had a public relations plan. Ronan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. I appreciated that. I did not need anger borrowed on my behalf. I needed facts. What does this have to do with tonight? I asked. Silas swiped to another folder. That is the important part. Warren has been moving money through shell companies. The drive contains records connecting those transfers to several businesses. Some belong to Ronan's network. Some do not. So Warren was hiding evidence. Yes. And he used me because he had already investigated me. Ronan nodded. He knew where you worked. He knew you had been assigned to this event. He knew Grant could keep your attention while he planted the envelope. My stomach turned. I was not unlucky. No, I was selected. Silence answered me. My phone buzzed on the table. This time, Grant's name appeared. I almost ignored it. Then another message arrived. Please let me explain before my father does something worse. Ronan watched my face. You do not have to answer. I know. That was exactly why I picked up the phone. I called Grant. He answered before the first full ring. Laurel, did you know? Silence. 2 years ago, I said. Did you know your father investigated me? Laurel, listen. Yes or no? His breath came through the speaker. Yes. Something inside me finally closed. Not shattered. Closed. And tonight. Another silence. I knew he wanted the envelope moved, Grant admitted. I did not know he would put it on you until we arrived. But when he did, you helped him. I was trying to protect my family. I looked through the hotel windows at Manhattan glowing beyond the glass. That is the difference between us, Grant. You keep hurting people and calling it protection. His voice dropped. You do not understand, Ronan Vale. I looked across at Ronan. He did not move. Maybe not. Then understand this. My father is going to offer him a deal. The drive in exchange for leaving you alone. I felt Ronan's expression change before I looked at him. Grant continued. And if Vale refuses, my father will make it look like you were part of everything. I ended the call. Ronan stood. He will not get the chance. No, I rose too. You are not deciding this for me. His eyes narrowed. Laurel, if you destroy the Mercers to protect me, then I am still just the woman powerful men move around the board. I placed my hand on the tablet. Make me a copy of everything with my name on it. Ronan stared at me for a long moment. Then he looked at Silas. Do it. I do not want revenge, I said. I want a record they cannot rewrite. Silas looked up from his laptop in the hotel's private conference room. Dawn was still hours away, but the night already felt impossibly long. He had copied every document containing my name, the surveillance footage from the party, Grant's accusation, and the financial records connected to Warren's investigation of me. Done, he said. One encrypted copy for you. One preserved with independent counsel. Ronan stood near the windows, hands in his pockets. There is another option. Of course there is. Warren requested a meeting. I looked at him. Already. He believes he still has leverage. Does he? Ronan's expression barely changed. Not the kind he thinks. 30 minutes later, Warren Mercer entered the conference room with Grant beside him. Grant looked exhausted. Warren looked immaculate. That told me almost everything about both men. Warren glanced at me and frowned. Why is she here? I almost smiled. Ronan did not. Ask her. Warren turned toward me. Miss Bennett, this is a business matter. It became my business when you put evidence in my pocket. Grant looked away. Warren pulled out a chair. You are misunderstanding a complicated situation. Then simplify it. He studied me as if recalculating my value. The drive is returned. The footage disappears. Your employment is unaffected, and tonight becomes an unfortunate misunderstanding. And the documents about me from 2 years ago. For the first time, his expression slipped. Grant whispered, Dad. Warren ignored him. Private background research is not unusual. $35,000 to investigate your son's girlfriend seems unusual to me. Silence. I placed a folder on the table. My attorney will receive copies of everything before 9 tomorrow morning. Warren's eyes narrowed. Your attorney? An independent attorney, I said. Not Ronan's. Ronan said nothing. That had been my condition. Warren leaned back. And what exactly do you intend to do? Protect myself. From what? From whatever story you plan to tell after framing a waitress at a charity party. His face hardened. Be careful with accusations. That is why I brought evidence. Grant finally looked at me. Laurel, please. No. You had 2 years to say please. Tonight you had 3 chances to stop humiliating me. You chose your father every time. His eyes dropped. Warren turned toward Ronan. Surely we can discuss this rationally. Ronan's answer was almost gentle. You are discussing it rationally. You simply dislike who is speaking. Warren stared at him. What do you want? Ronan looked at me. He did not answer for me. That mattered. I folded my hands on the table. They were steady now. First, the venue receives a written statement clearing me of theft. Second, neither you nor Grant contacts my employer about tonight except to confirm I did nothing wrong. Third, you stop using my name, my history, or my life as leverage in whatever business dispute you created. Warren gave a humorless smile. And if I refuse? I slid my phone across the table. On the screen was a scheduled message containing copies of the surveillance footage and the documents tied to my name. Then the evidence goes to my attorney and the appropriate authorities, and you can explain it without me in the room. Warren looked at Ronan. You taught her this? Ronan's gaze remained on me. No, I stood. That is the part you never understood about me. Neither of you made me strong. You just kept giving me reasons to remember I already was. Grant's face fell. Warren said nothing. I picked up my coat. Ronan opened the conference room door, then stepped aside instead of walking through first. As I passed him, he spoke quietly. Where do you want to go? Not where should I take you? Not what happens next. Where do you want to go? I looked toward the lobby, where the first pale hint of morning touched the windows. Home. He nodded. Then home it is. Behind us, Warren Mercer still had money, connections, and a name that opened doors. But for the first time that night, none of those things could close mine. You know you do not have to keep standing by the door. Ronan looked at me from the battered wooden chair beside my work table, and I smiled because 6 months earlier, nobody would have believed Ronan Vale could sit patiently inside a 700-square-foot restoration studio in Queens while glue dried on a 19th-century book. I am working, I said. You have been staring at the same page for 10 minutes. It is a complicated page. It is blank. His mouth curved. 6 months had changed things. Warren Mercer's attorneys eventually confirmed in writing that I had no involvement in the missing drive or any financial misconduct. The evidence connected to my name went where it needed to go, handled by people whose job was to untangle records and responsibility. I stopped following the details once I knew my name was clear. Grant sent one apology. I read it once, deleted it, and never answered. That surprised me. For years, I had imagined closure would arrive with some perfect speech that finally made him understand what he had done. It did not. Closure was quieter. It was realizing I no longer needed him to understand. My studio opened 4 months later. Nothing glamorous. One narrow storefront. 2 work tables. Shelves I painted myself. A brass sign Tessa insisted looked crooked even after we measured it 3 times. On opening morning, Ronan sent no roses, no extravagant gift, no dramatic display. He arrived carrying coffee and an old leather-bound copy of the Odyssey with a damaged spine. Can you save it? He asked. Probably. Good. That depends on whether you can afford me. He had laughed. Really laughed. I learned that sound slowly. I also learned that Ronan never touched me without invitation again. He asked before entering spaces that belonged to me. Asked before sending a car. Asked before calling late. It seemed strange that such small questions could reveal so much about a man. Laurel. I looked up from the book beneath my hands. What? You disappeared again. Thinking. Dangerous habit. You should know. Rain tapped softly against the front window, turning the streetlights outside into blurred gold. For a moment, I remembered another room filled with expensive glass and people who thought a waitress was too insignificant to matter. I remembered Grant's laughter. Warren's calculation. Ronan's hand reaching for mine before he had learned to ask. Do you ever think about that party? I asked. His expression became serious. Yes. Which part? The part where I made a decision for you because I thought my intentions justified it. I leaned against the work table. Still bothers you? It should. That answer warmed something in me. Not because he felt guilty. Because he had learned. Funny, I said. The first time we sat together, you did not ask permission. I remember. Everyone froze. I remember that too. And you thought you looked very impressive. I was told I did. I laughed. By Silas. Silas said I looked like an idiot. I always liked Silas. Ronan leaned back in the old chair. I have noticed. I walked around the work table and stopped in front of him. He looked up at me, but did not move. No assumption. No command. Just that familiar stillness, except now I understood what lived beneath it. Patience. Restraint. Choice. Have you learned anything since then? I asked. Several things. Such as, never underestimate a waitress. Good start. Never assume silence means weakness. Better. And never decide for Laurel Bennett where she belongs. I smiled. That one took you long enough. Then I stepped closer and settled onto his lap by my own choice, looping my arms lightly around his shoulders. Ronan's hands remained at his sides until I nodded. Only then did he place them gently around me. No ballroom. No audience. Nobody watching. Nobody freezing. Just rain against glass and an unfinished book waiting on my table. This is different, he said quietly. Completely. Why? I looked at the man who once believed power meant controlling the room and had somehow learned that love required leaving another person free inside it. Because this time, I whispered, I chose the seat. The first time Ronan Vale pulled me onto his lap, an entire room froze. The last time, there was no audience at all. And somehow, that was the moment that changed everything.